bringing in Manny Navarro, ACC football writer for The Athletic. Manny, thanks so much for coming on. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
All right, Manny, I'm going to ask you a stupid question to start this off before we even get into anything. I just came up with the idea of having a Hungry Hungry Hippos tournament. You remember that game?
Oh, yeah.
Would you partake in a Hungry Hungry Hippos tournament for like a $500 prize?
Depends. Am I putting my own money on the line, or is this just somebody else putting the money up?
No. We're going to put it up.
Just for fun.
And you win the Golden Hippo Award.
I'm in for it.
All right, Manny, from the ridiculous, now we're talking about something serious, and that's the House settlement finally came down and was made official on Friday. I guess just your overall reaction, your thoughts. You know, I've been kind of asking our guests, do you think this is a step forward, or do you think we're trading one set of problems for another?
Yeah, I think we really are. I mean, right now, obviously they're trying to find solutions to this, but I don't know that this is necessarily a solution, right? I mean, it feels like just the return of the bag man more than anything else in college football. I think, the NCAA and the government and everybody involved want the best situation for college sports to succeed, but as long as players can make money, regulating that process is going to be difficult. We know the history of college football. We know the history of the bagman in this game and the pursuit of money. And I think we're going to be going through some more painful years in the years to come, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know this is brand new, and there's some speculation involved with this next question. But in your opinion, what are some of the things that you believe, athletic directors are most concerned about, kind of navigating this whole settlement moving forward?
I think they just want it to be to create a fair, competitive environment. And I think the reality is we're never really going to get there. I think the way college football has always been for years and years and years was the schools with the most money, with the most funds, could always buy the best players. And I think while they're certainly trying to regulate this and make this a more even playing field, as long as TV revenue is involved, as long as rich billionaires at schools are involved, there's never really going to be a level playing field. And I've talked to plenty of athletic directors and coaches, and that's what they say they want. I just don't believe that's ever going to become a reality.
All right, let's talk some ACC football now. And I know that you put out an article today for The Athletic in the New York Times about the 10 biggest moves in the conference this offseason. And it begins, of course, with Bill Belichick. What's your take on this situation? How invested do you think he is in this job? Do you think he's going to be there for a while? Is it just, hey, I'm going to try it out for a year or two and then hand things over to my son? How do you think this whole thing plays out at North Carolina?
Well, look, I don't know Bill personally, but just studying him and watching his actions and talking to people at Carolina, my sense is this is about him having a chance to coach again. He enjoyed TV and his role on ESPN as a guest. I think he just wanted to get back to coaching football, and obviously bringing his sons over to coach with him. I think eventually this is all about the handoff, right? Putting them in a position to take over the program. But I think for right now, he's going to take a wait and see approach, and they've invested a lot of time and money in bringing in quality personnel people to try to make North Carolina a serious contender. But again, we're living in a college football world where NIL and so many other factors affect things, and players can leave it, on a dime. They can agree to take certain money to come to your school, and then they'll exit 2 months later because there's no contracts that force anybody to stay where they are. So it's going to be very interesting to see how North Carolina does this season. But I think from the Belichick perspective, I think this is a handoff. I think in a year or two he will be gone, and his son will be trying to take over the program.
I'm 100% with you on that. Another item that you put in this article, you put Stanford hires Andrew Luck. And, we're starting to see more and more programs around the country, hire GMs and use GMs, and we're seeing that in basketball as well. Syracuse basketball just hired a GM about a year ago. I guess, can you speak to that whole idea of a GM now running the show in college athletics, and particularly with NIL and everything that's going on, it seems like it's almost necessary these days. Do you agree with that?
there's a lot for the head coach to juggle, and it definitely feels like a two-person job. It feels like at least a two-person job, right? Somebody has to be anchoring the roster management, and somebody else actually has to be coaching the team on the field and making sure you've got the right coordinators and position coaches and people around the program to make sure that these guys are growing as players. And so Luck right now is going to try to handle a lot of the roster building, a lot of the moving the program forward. Stanford has certainly fallen off here the last few years. It was a very good football program not too long ago. People forget that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who he ends up hiring, right? I mean, Frank Reich for now is sort of the interim guy. Certainly not a guy I think that's going to be the long-term solution, but you need to have a marriage now in college football between your personnel guy and your head coach. And if the head coach really wants to be the personnel guy, you probably need to bring in a different coach to come take care of things on the field. And so I'm very interested to see how this Andrew Luck situation plays out and how other head coaches begin to maybe shed some of their responsibilities and put their trust in a GM to handle some of the decisions they used to handle.
Manny Navarro from The Athletic joining us here on Orange Nation. And, Manny, we talked about Stanford. We talked about North Carolina. What are some other teams that I guess have impressed you in the offseason with some of the moves they made, whether it's transfer portal stuff or, bringing in recruits or personnel on the coaching staff? Who's impressed you from an ACC perspective?
Well, I think, Miami, and obviously I'm based here out of South Florida, but I'm around that program quite a bit. And they, went up to Syracuse last year with a chance to make the ACC championship game and lost because they were so bad on defense. And I thought that from a roster building perspective of actual additions to your roster, they did the best job of anybody in the ACC. They signed another top 10, number one recruiting class in the ACC, and then they went out and they got a bunch of guys to fix their secondary as well as Carson Beck to play quarterback. So I thought the Hurricanes did the best job in terms of personnel, and I think Florida State had a really good run as well. Sort of upgrading that offense. They went from being so good 2 years ago to just 2 wins. Hiring Gus Malzahn, I don't know if that's ultimately going to work out in terms of his offense and his scheme being what sort of fixes things at Florida State. But they went out and they got some really good players out of the transfer portal. Thomas Castellanos, who I thought was a pretty good quarterback for Boston College up until things sort of ran its course last season. Deuce Robinson, a really good receiver out of USC, Squirrel White from Tennessee. They got some good players in the portal. I'm very interested to see how Mike Norvell does. It was sort of all or nothing with the transfer portal, I think, his first few years, and they've started to recruit a little bit better as well. So I think the two Florida schools are the ones that, in terms of personnel and upgrading their rosters, did the best job.
I do want to ask you about Syracuse. And, last year we saw them under Fran Brown take a jump and get to 10 wins, 9 wins in the regular season. They win a bowl game. And they've got this momentum. And now you look at their schedule this year, and their schedule is just absolutely brutal. All their tough games are away. They've got four teams that made the college football playoff plus Miami on their schedule, all away from home. What are your expectations this year for Syracuse in year 2 under Fran Brown?
Yeah, look, they were a great team last year. I think one that surprised a lot of people in terms of just how quickly Fran Brown was able to come in and win, right, and to make them a successful program. Year 2 is always the toughest test because that's when you kind of start, at least as a head coach in today's era, that's when you start to kind of count on some of your own homegrown recruits and players that you got in your recruiting class. And Brown still hasn't really had much time to do that. I know that he signed a big high school recruiting class in his first full cycle here as head coach, 35 guys. But the transfer portal, unfortunately, it's just not a place where you're going to hit on a Kyle McCord every single year. So I think I'm very interested to see what happens with Ricky Collins and Steve Angeli and how the offense sort of evolves now. Losing Trevor Penna was sort of a big loss. He was a consistent playmaker for them. I know they've brought in a bunch of new players, but you never really know how those pieces are going to fit. So to me, I think for Fran Brown, if you can get back to a bowl game in year 2 after losing some of the quality guys that you had got in the portal in year one, and that to me will be sort of the test. If they could do that, if they can get back to a bowl game and continue to recruit well, because I think he is doing a good job on the recruiting trail. It's just you need those guys to sort of grow up and grow into their positions to be able to help you. So that's my expectations with Boston Syracuse.
One more Syracuse question. You brought up the quarterback position. Ricky Collins, the transfer from LSU, Steve Angeli, the transfer from Notre Dame. Neither played a ton. I mean, Angeli appeared in a lot of games, but didn't play a ton there in South Bend. How do you envision that quarterback battle shaking out? They had Ricky Collins. It seemed like they were set, and then they went out after spring practice and picked up Steve Angeli. Kind of, I think there's a lot of speculation locally that they went and got him because they maybe weren't 100% satisfied with Ricky Collins. Do you think Steve Angeli would have the inside edge to win the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think anytime you see a move after the spring to go get an additional player, that to me smells of a coach who's not convinced in what he has at that spot. And so I don't know that Angeli necessarily will win the battle with Collins. I think both of them are probably neck and neck from a talent perspective. I thought Angeli played pretty well for Notre Dame in spots, including the playoffs. I was there for the Penn State game when he had to fill in, and I think ultimately here, the best guy is going to win at the end of camp, but I would tell you for sure the fact that Syracuse went out and still found another quarterback in the portal tells me anyway that they're not convinced Ricky Collins is the guy.
Yeah, it seems that way, certainly. Listen, Manny, we really appreciate you coming on. Great stuff, great insight, and enjoy some of your summer, and hopefully we can talk again during the college football season.
Sounds great, guys. Take care.
Manny Navarro, ACC football writer for The Athletic. Again, put out a story today in The Athletic in the New York Times. Check it out. 10 biggest moves this offseason for ACC football. With that, we're going to hit a timeout. Full lines open the rest of the way. 315-437-7644. We're back after this on ESPN Radio.
Good job, Steven.
40 a.m. Pretty soon we'll control the whole dial.